When most people think of Art Nouveau, they picture curvy floral wallpaper and twisting vines. It's frequently remembered as a flamboyant era of aesthetic decoration. To understand what the movement actually accomplished, we have to look at the architectural reality of Europe prior to 1890. The built environment was dominated by historicism, the practice of borrowing and copying styles from the past. Historicism operated on a simple mechanism. Architects built functional, rectangular masonry boxes and glued historical styles, like Greek columns or Gothic arches, onto the surface. These applied decorations carried zero structural weight. Art Nouveau functioned as a structural rebellion, moving beyond surface-level aesthetics into the core physics of the building. It proposed a system where buildings ornamented themselves through their own physical construction. To see how they achieved this, we have to examine how the design world abstracted the physics of nature to escape the weight of historical precedent. Art Nouveau collapsed the binary separating structural engineering from decorative art. This shift begins with Art Nouveau's immediate predecessor, the arts and crafts movement. Emerging around 1860, arts and crafts championed human handcraft and natural materials as a reaction against the mass production of the Industrial Revolution. Arts and crafts depicted nature faithfully. It treated the plant as a literal subject to be copied, evoking a pre-industrial view of the English countryside. Around 1890, Art Nouveau emerged from within these ideals. It kept the ethical spirit of the craftsman, but moved away from nostalgic literalism. Designers stopped copying nature and instead extracted its underlying physics, its growth patterns, its energy, and its structural curves. The plant was reduced to a single, sinuous, asymmetrical vector line. This became known as the whiplash curve. This abstracted, organic line was deployed as a universal visual grammar. It was capable of speaking to a modern, industrialized age without referencing a single historical epoch. By translating organic nature into pure geometry, architects found a structural language that owed nothing to the Greeks, the Romans, or the Goths. We see this geometry applied to structure in 1893 by Belgian architect Victor Horta. Hotel Tassel is considered the first fully realized Art Nouveau building. Moving inside the building reveals the core concept that drove Horta's design: structural spatial logic. Notice the cast iron columns in the central hall. Normally an industrial material hidden in domestic spaces, Horta left it exposed. He forced the column to carry the physical load of the floors above, while its capital blooms into botanical iron tendrils. The column never stops being structural when it becomes decorative. By making the load-bearing skeleton beautiful, the need for an applied decorative skin became obsolete. This identical logic dictates the most celebrated feature of Hotel Tassel, the central stair balustrade. This ironwork introduces the concept of load-bearing ornament. The whiplash vine physically acts as a truss, actively supporting the weight of the wooden handrail and guiding human movement up the stairs. This sets up the ultimate architectural test. If you were to magically remove the decorative elements of this staircase, what would happen? The structure would immediately collapse. The railing and the ornament are the exact same object. Horta established a principle. Architectural ornament must grow from a building out of structural necessity, exactly like leaves are generated by a branch. It is important to note that Horta did not invent the use of glass and iron in architecture. The Industrial Revolution had been using massive quantities of iron and glass for decades in utilitarian macrostructures, like train stations and the Eiffel Tower. But in those industrial structures, the materials were purely functional. They were strictly separated from respectable, traditional residential architecture. Horta brought the industrial train station into the private home. Leveraging these industrial materials expressively allowed him to achieve forms that stone could never navigate: extreme curvature, transparency, and interiors flooded with natural light. Art Nouveau's genius was in domesticating the brutal materials of the Industrial Revolution to serve human sensory experience. This rigorous consistency required a philosophy known as the total work of art. In a true Art Nouveau space, the architect designs everything. From the pillars to the floor tiles, every element speaks the same organic language. Look how the geometric patterns embedded in the floor mosaic directly echo the physical shapes forged into the iron balustrade. This creates a spatial logic where the interior feels like a singular, grown organism. By treating the building holistically, Art Nouveau displaced the traditional model of architecture as an assembly of disconnected parts. While Horta focused on the iron skeleton inside, Catalan architect Antoni Gaudí applied these principles to the public streets of Barcelona. Gaudí applied Art Nouveau's organic logic to the entire exterior urban envelope of Casa Batlló. He eradicated straight lines entirely. The balconies mimic coral or bone, and the ground-level columns function visually and structurally like skeletal limbs. The surface of the building acts as a shifting skin, utilizing trencadís, broken ceramic tile fragments, to change color in the sunlight. Casa Batlló represents the movement at its limit, a structure that appears as a living, breathing entity occupying the city block. 4 defining pillars united this explosive architectural era. First, a reliance on flowing organic lines. Second, the absolute fusion of structure with decoration. Third, the expressive domestication of modern industrial materials. And fourth, a rejection of copying historical styles. Despite its international influence, Art Nouveau flourished only from 1890 to about 1905. Following World War I, the extreme craftsmanship required for these spaces became economically unsustainable, and the design world pivoted to the stark rationalism of modernism. The legacy of Art Nouveau lies in its proof that a modern society can invent an entirely new, structurally honest architecture without looking backward.